Want to give you a quick overview of Digite. We are a pioneer in web-based collaborative products for distributed teams. We are headquartered here in Mountain View, California. We have about 250,000 users of our tool that use it in America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and other geographies. Our products cover the lean Kanban, agile application lifecycle management, and project and portfolio management domains. Swift-kanban is a flagship product in the lean Kanban space. We were named by Gartner in the ALM Market Scope in 2010. A quick overview of our Swift-kanban product. The Swift-kanban product was developed with inputs from top leaders like David Anderson and Masa. It is ideal for use both in IT and non-IT functions such as HR, marketing, and we've seen a number of customers adopt it in IT and non-IT domains. In the product, we've actually made visualization of work very easy. There is a very effective way to limit workflow and look at the throughput and quality metrics that actually come out. We allow you to collaborate visually. Automatic critical performance metrics are made visible using our metrics framework. You can evolve and improve your processes as you continue to use the tool. We have a powerful platform that is very highly configurable and very easy to use. This product is available both as a SaaS and as an on-premise license. We have a 30-day free trial license. We would encourage you to try it for your Agile and Kanban needs. We have a number of customers like T-Mobile, MetLife, Infosys, Virtusa, Sony in multiple geographies using our products for delivering the value to their customers, and the teams are completely distributed across the geographies. With that, let me introduce Dr. Masa. Dr. Masa has got 25 years of international experience. He is the creator of the Lean Valley Innovation, and he's currently writing a book about it. He's a recognized coach, a consultant, and a trainer in the Lean and Kanban communities. Masa is also a senior consultant with the Qatar Consortium, and the Lean Innovation Value, he teaches a course in Lean Valley Innovation at UC Berkeley Extension. Without much ado, take it away, Masa.
Thank you so much, Ram. Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing pretty well. Very shortly, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Value Nova. We're a coaching, consulting, training company, and we provide services within the Lean Agile space. This includes, continuous improvement, Lean systems thinking, innovation, transformation from PMI to Lean Agile, as well as Kanban and Scrum. And we're very happy to be partners with Digite. Also, we're based in the Silicon Valley in the US, and we have presence in several countries through our partners and associates. And this is in order to improve the coverage and be closer to you. And of course, we're looking forward to further coverage. So let's get into topic. Let me just get started by indicating that original title for this presentation was Think Outside the Kanban Board. And this was, a little bit taking, the famous phrase, think outside the box. And also because I use it very often when I am doing coaching and training as a means to invite people to go beyond the limits of what the Kanban board offers. So we decided to change the presentation to think beyond the Kanban board because we think this conveys a better message. So within the Agile and Lean space, we are very often told that we have to make sure that all the stakeholders are involved in the project. The more pair of eyes we have looking at what it is that needs to be done, then the better off we will be. And so what we do is, yes, we make our tools highly visible, access to all the stakeholders. The more people, the better. And this is great. This allows and increases communication and improvement. And it also allows us to more easily be able to identify different aspects, some of them having to do with Kanban in itself in this case. So for example, by now, some of you might have realized that there is an interesting aspect here. We have a whip of 5, nonetheless, there are 6 tickets under that column. So, this will be some sort of, hey, gotcha, there is something there. And then this will invite to understand what's going on. So that's good. Kanban is a nice way to be able to keep things, with discipline. But there is something that I think is more important to consider. And it has to do with the fact that we have a tendency to sometimes oversimplify things. And oftentimes we want the mechanism, the tool, or the methodology that we're using to be, the steps to follow to be successful. And also that is true, it is partially true, meaning there is more than just that. And what we have here on the slide is a couple of photos of teams that are using the Get Kanban game. Some of you might be familiar with it. Those of you who aren't, I highly recommend it. And I use these both when I am doing coaching and when I am doing training. And every single time that I use this game, right before beginning the game, I tell teams to make sure to think outside the Kanban board. Because, and I reiterate them, you have to make sure that you are considering everything that's going on. Nonetheless, up until now, 100% of the teams that have played the game very rapidly fall into the trap, and they start focusing only on the mechanics of Kanban. And that's risky because in a training course is no big deal, but in real life, the impact can be significant. So through this emphasis, people start trying to look at the board from different angles. And that's a good thing, but still there is something missing because it is only limited to that perspective. So what kind of extra aspects they start considering? Well, for example, quantification. They start looking at the cumulative flow diagram, they start looking at the control chart, and they start taking into account what they observe there. And that's great, that's really good, and we're on the right track. But still, there is more to just that. So we have here, for example, this is a snapshot that I took. I was working with one of my customers, and I started to step aside from the meeting briefly, and actually I do this quite often. Instead of focusing on the meeting, the discussion of the meeting, and the board, I try to observe the overall behavior. What people are saying, what they are doing, their facial expressions, their body expressions, everything. I just try to absorb as much as I can. And what I realize is that, very easily, very rapidly, and way too often, people just fall into that trap of just getting way too focused on just one thing. So even though we have different stakeholders, they're still looking at just one same object, in this case, the board. And yes, they might be looking at the other visualization aspects, such as the quantification elements, but they're looking at just that. They're not looking beyond that. And what we have to understand is that we are dealing actually with a very big and complex the situation when we are trying to create a product or a service for a customer, for some end users. It is not that simple. There is so much more that needs to be considered. And why is that? Well, it is because we as human beings are complex adaptive systems. And, once we, get into further interaction with other groups, with the customers, with end users, then that complex adaptive system becomes even more complex. And if we add to that the fact that the project in itself is a complex adaptive system, and then we're then, trying to have some sort of process established, this process is actually dealing with the complex adaptive system. So we have, like a microcosm of complex adaptive systems. And there's other elements that we have to take into account, that have to do with geography, they have to do with weather, they have to do with, economy, etc. There's so many other elements that we need to be aware of and that we need to take into account to be able to better understand what's going on with our project and make better decisions and take better actions as to what to do. If we take, for example, the military, the way the Marines are trained and the way they operate, in real situations is such that they know that they have to be aware of everything that is going on in their environment. They have to adapt at a blink of an eye to a situation that is obviously highly dangerous, and they need to cooperate and collaborate and communicate in a very effective way to be able to be successful. So they have to actually be aware, again, of the entire surrounding. So if we think about Kanban, as a methodology, if we look at it as, as a tool to help us make our project successful, even though it's highly visual, it provides a lot of detail and information. It is just that. It is just a tool that provides visualization. So what we have to understand is that there is going to be a big difference between, that visualization, that rich visualization, and the real world. It doesn't matter how hard we try, we cannot actually emulate the real world. And actually trying to do that will be a waste. It doesn't make sense to do that. So what it is, we have to be paying attention to both. But not only that, if we limit ourselves to paying attention to only what we are visualizing through the board, then we're missing big time, because there's an entire, extra context. There's all that other information, all those other aspects that we need to take into account that are highly important to be able to carry on our project in a very successful way. And so, we have to look at aspects such as, what is, the common practices that, in the case of Kanban, will be the principles, the practices. There's a lot of emphasis on apprehending thinking and systems thinking, and yes, that's great, it's important, and we need to go beyond that as well. So we have to understand that we have to take risks, and we have to be able to have the right level of understanding and knowledge to be able to take the right risks in the best possible way. We have to be able to come up with innovative ways to be able to make the project more successful, use our experience, have drive to motivate people, use our intuition, use people's skills, which is highly important, and this is not only for leaders, this is actually for everybody. We have to enhance that, as well as think in terms of throughput accounting and not cost accounting. This is actually one of the most difficult barriers to take care of, at least in my experience. So I'm going to explain to you how we have done this, using different elements in two different cases. I am using this because I think it can bring, an idea of how we could do this, in our own projects. So the first one of them is a case, on a project for the healthcare industry. This was actually a multi-million project that involved two different companies to build this solution. And I was actually brought to this company to introduce Lean and Kanban. However, very shortly after I joined, it became very clear that this project was destined to failure. And well, what was decided was pretty much to cancel the project. I asked the two CEOs involved to allow me to try to rescue the project, since I was fairly confident that I was going to be able to do something about it, and they allowed me to do so. And basically, what I did was not just focus on bringing Lean and bringing Kanban. There were other aspects into account, and basically, what I consider to be the right approach is to start doing several things at the same time. So basically, to start getting several swimmers in the pool and start swimming, even so then we'll be a little bit ahead of others. So one of them was to bring awareness over the team and the organization. This was actually one of the first things that I did, because it was very clear to me that the main reason why the project was failing was because these two companies involved, the people in the project, were not functioning properly. So it doesn't matter, even if we had the ideal solution in the history of mankind to bring to this project, if the organizations and if the people are not ready for it, it's not going to work. So the first step was that, and basically what I did was to do a series of serious games, some of them games that I have designed myself. I'm not going to dig into detail of what those games were. It's not the purpose of this presentation. However, what I can assure you is that in a very short period of time, and I'm talking about hour and a half, the team and the organization became aware of how dysfunctional things were and how that was affecting the project, and how important it was to start changing those aspects in order to start, increasing the chances of the project being successful. Of course, this was the first step. It was an ongoing activity of generating this change, this behavioral change. I also brought awareness over the project, which was to make them realize that the way the project was being managed and the different activities around the project itself could be done differently, and that there was a lot of opportunity for improvement. So this was the way I did this was through using quite a bit of system thinking and lean thinking, talking to people, having sessions with the team, increasing communication, with the different groups involved in the project, and so on. One important aspect that I knew was key in the way the project was going at that moment, and to change it into a successful project, was to create a real vision for it. Because the vision they originally had to do with, they just made this fabulous product that the hospitals and doctors are going to use and love, and we're going to make a lot of money out of it. And that was the wrong way to look at this. So what I did was I actually had an all-hands session, which I masqueraded in the form of a brown bag, and what I ended up doing was, giving a talk on systems and lean thinking at the level that was useful to them and for the purposes of the project. And I took the opportunity to actually inject what I considered was the right vision. And this vision had to do with the fact that I wanted to make sure that they understood that what they were building was not just a product. What they were building was something that people whose health was compromised at different degrees and in different ways was going to interact with that, and that it implied that whatever this solution did was going to help these people get better or much better more quickly, or it could actually do the opposite. It could do quite the opposite, and be there to indicate to them that the implications of this solution could be such that if things were not okay, people could even die out of this. And a way that in which I did this even more of more impact to them was to put them inside that context in terms of having a beloved one go to a hospital and use, that is using the system. And as a result of the usage of the system, things going wrong and then, having, the consequences that we don't want there to be. And there was an immediate change of behavior. I mean, the increase of productivity and quality after that talk that I had with them was tremendous. And people weren't necessarily working harder, they were actually working better. So the quality started going up big time. What I also did was the two companies involved, even though one of them was being very proactive and they physically relocated to be at the same building, at the same floor as the other company, they were not communicating properly. So I had to do major efforts to be able to bring them closer together and to actually interact as if they were one same company and one same team. This actually created a tremendous change in the way they were doing things. And also a real understanding of the end users, which is something they weren't doing. They were pretending to the customer and pretending that the customer was right, which is not uncommon. Actually, I will say that it's a very common aspect of most projects. And then, yes, there was Kanban. So I started bringing systems and lean thinking together with Kanban throughout this transformation. So I didn't do one at a time. I was working with them in parallel, some of them moving quicker than others, depending on how I saw the advance. And Kanban was a great way to help visualize most of what was going on. Those aspects that we were not able to visualize to the Kanban board were improved thanks to Kanban, because it was through the visualization in Kanban that I could use those elements to start bringing into people the conversation as understanding what the root cause of the problem was, and to have them realize that the root cause had nothing to do with Kanban in itself as the solution to the problem, but it was allowing us to, more easily be able to reach that understanding. So what kind of benefits did we get from that? Well, by the end of the first month, the number of work hours average per week per person went down from 72 to 45 hours of work. And this is not something that was imposed. So meaning I didn't tell people, hey, you're working too hard. Tomorrow you are going to work only 9 hours instead of 12. I didn't do that. So this reduction in the number of hours is something that happened naturally as a result of the other changes that we were making. The way we were doing requirements was also modified in such a way that it went down to 1/5 of the time, and the quality improved quite significantly. Communication went up big time. They used to work in a very stressful way, and it actually went to the level of personal insult and things of that level. I mean, the level of stress was incredible. And communication improved, and actually these two companies have been in a relationship for over 8 years, and they told me that their communication had never been as good as it was thanks to this. Defects went down big time, about 20, a factor of 20. And there was a significant increase of continuous integration. And obviously, this level of automation was a big contributor to a lot of the other improvements. One important aspect also was that we didn't fire anybody. We didn't hire any new personnel. We used exactly the same people we had. Even though this was not the recommendation that I was originally given. I was told that I had 100% of freedom to be able to do any modifications in the staff as I saw it necessary. And well, basically what I did was, focus on doing changes in the system and boosting the changes of behavior, and having layoffs and hires as the last resort. And fortunately, I didn't need to do that at all. The happiness factor also went up significantly. The way I measured the happiness factor was by using a happiness index that is being actually used for several countries. It began with the country of Bhutan, and I did basically an adaptation to how to do this for projects and organizations. So in the end, this project was successful, and it was implemented at several hospitals. So not only there was no loss, there was a significant gain, and the amount of benefit that this project had to the designer of this product was such that this person actually, he started a new company. And one of the services that this company offers is software development applying Lean, Agile, and Kanban. So to me, it was highly rewarding to see that they saw how great the benefit is of doing this, that they decided to do it themselves. The other case is in Telecom. This Telecom is a company that provides services to big telecoms, particularly in the cell phone space. And this is not IT, this is not software development. And basically, this company was actually in good shape. They had an 86% return on time. But there were certain, improvements that the director for this company identified, and he wanted to make sure that this company did a lot better than just 86%. So we started applying Lean and Kanban. But I also did a lot of coaching to this director to make him realize about the importance of taking into account how to improve the entire system. So the benefit of doing this was that the communication started improving. Problems with contractors actually there were some problems evident because the way tasks were being handled was not under a certain discipline, and Kanban helped improve that. So in general, there were the kind of improvements that we would expect from bringing Kanban and Lean into an organization. So we were very happy about that. The on-time delivery went up to 99%. They had a backlog of 0. The work hours per week were good. They were not aggressive. Nonetheless, they went down. What is really important about this is actually the other aspects that came as a result of this. There were other additional benefits that were fairly amazing. And so to give you an example of what it is that we did, that had a tremendous impact. This is a Kanban board that they were using, one of the different Kanban boards they had. And this one was to take care of certain tickets of tasks that were coming from different customers. And these companies' customers are very big. So I'm talking about companies like Maxcom, Telefonica, etc. So the big telecoms. Well, for those of you who are very familiar with Kanban, you might find it a little bit odd that this board has all yellow tickets. And in reality, not all tickets are of the same class of service. You can hopefully see some of the tickets have some dots on them, and those dots are actually of different colors. So this company decided to identify the classes of service just by the color of the dot on the card. And if there's no dot, then that was the standard class of service. But anyway, so if we look at in the middle, there's a column that is subdivided. It has two swim lanes, so to speak. The one that says en progreso, this was in a Spanish-speaking country. And this is the second version of the Kanban board. And this is very important because if you have a Kanban board and that Kanban board doesn't mature, meaning doesn't change over time, then that is a big indicator that most likely there is something that we are missing, because projects behave differently throughout their lifespan. And if the Kanban board is to reflect reality, and in this case the reality of the project, then the Kanban board should adapt to that reality. So anyway, this photo is of the second version of that board. I took this photo when I went to visit them about a month and a half after the first round of interaction, and I was happy to see that the board was different. And I asked one of the team members to meet the board. He did a very good job doing that, which is a good indication that they are actually understanding what they are doing. But it called my attention that this particular column, when this person was explaining it to me, he kind of slowed, and he slowed down not to explain things in detail, but he actually slowed down because he himself wasn't very clear as to what exactly was going on here. So that was an indicator to me to pay attention to it. So I started a session of discussion with the team to understand better what was going on there. And as a result of that interaction, we decided to make a modification to the board, and the modification was the following. That middle column, what we did was we included a new column to better visualize what was going on there. So what we had now that new column, one other column disappeared, and basically what was originally the small square at the bottom of the middle column that says en progreso became the entire middle column that says provider A, B, and C. I did that to masquerade because those were the actual names of the providers, and we're not disclosing them at this moment. And there is still what was originally the small square at the bottom of en progreso. The difference is that what we have there now is that those pending tickets are internal tickets, and everything else that has to do with external with providers is that new column. And what this did was it allowed us to better visualize what was going on with those providers, understand their behavior, be able to quantify it, to understand what was going on. And this was very important because this was actually having the main impact in the fact that their on-time delivery was 86%. Doing this allowed us to be able to talk to providers in a very informed and more intelligent way as to how what they were doing or not doing was helping or affecting that 86%. And this was great because they were more open to listen to our arguments, but also what happened was some of them say, hey, this is great, thank you so much, but we're not sure what we can do. So what we did was, well, introduce them to Lean Thinking and Kanban. And this contributed to the improvement. And as I mentioned earlier, what we had was, we went up to 99% improvement on on-time delivery. But there were some additional benefits, and this was the best part. One of them was, well, this deficiency that was encountered, and the improvement of the contractor service. But what also happened was that most of the consultants for this company had enough bandwidth, had enough time to be able to improve their skill set to the point that they started becoming service managers. What also happened was that the customer satisfaction got to the point that some of the customers, as contracts with other providers ended, instead of renewing the contract, they were transferring the contracts to my customer. And this company was actually the smallest contractor for those big telecoms. And what was very impressive was that after 1 year of operation, they were serving more contracts. They had obviously more work to do. Nonetheless, the employees were working less hours, and they were still at 99%. And it was not until past half a year of time that they increased their staff by only 1 person. So the entire economy of this company was going up in a very amazing way. So what ended up happening was that the largest customer decided to start transferring project leadership to them instead of keeping it to themselves. So what that meant was it implied even more responsibility. It required people to start moving to different locations and so on, and they were still being able to satisfy all that demand without having to increase the number of people they had in the team. And the last benefit that happened, and I should have put it here on the slide, is that this company a few months back, towards the end of last year, they actually were able to open a new branch at a different country. So the amount of benefit was tremendous. And again, this was because it was not just making sure that they were using Kanban efficiently and that they were able to just satisfy the demand of work in a very efficient way with high quality. They were actually figuring out ways to improve the entire system. And that's what is important to take into account. So in conclusion, what is important is to realize that it's not easy. We have to look at things from different angles. We have to understand that even though Kanban is a very simple tool, it's not that easy to use and to apply, because it's not just a tool, it's not just a method. It's something that has to do with much more than that. And the level of success that we're going to have is going to be impacted very highly by how much we are willing to actually go beyond just the boundaries that the tool in itself has, that the method has, not focusing just on the principles of Kanban, but understanding the entire system. And using Kanban as a help is just a tool, it's just something extra that is going to allow us to be successful. But we have to actually make sure that we go beyond that. So don't limit yourselves, to use the boundaries of what you're doing. And again, as I say earlier in this presentation, this applies not just to Kanban. This applies to pretty much anything and everywhere. So I invite you to start expanding that, start acquiring new skills, and to combine them. There is no magic formula. There is no one way to do it. It's something that you have to figure out, case by case. I have never done the same kind of adoption and brought a kind of solution to more than one customer. Each one of them is unique, and it's a matter of applying all these experiences and knowledge and being willing to innovate and to take risks. So that's it. What I wanted to talk about you guys, and I invite you, just really take as much advantage as you can of the method and the tool, but also go beyond that. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Masa. That was a wonderful presentation. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to take questions. Please type in your questions in the question box, which you find at the bottom right corner of your screen, and we will take the questions as they come in. So, Masa, I have a question for you. I just couldn't but help see the happiness factor measurement that you had in one of your slides, and it struck close to me primarily because I was at a client site yesterday, and they were reviewing a number of teams using Scrum and Kanban, and the question was, hey, what was the best thing that has happened to your team since you transitioned from one of those practices to a Kanban practice? And one of the team came up and said, the best thing that has happened to us is that we are happy. And there was a lot of discussion about it. And finally the other teams also agreed that it is one of those things that has happened to their team, not only delivering value and this and that, all the stuff which we all know about, but generally being happy was one of those things that came out, which I thought was a very profound statement for the teams to make. So is that your experience, that teams adopting things like Kanban are generally happier compared to other teams?
Okay, well, I have actually seen both behaviors. I mean, and by that I mean happiness and unhappiness. Actually, this particular first example that I gave, the case for the healthcare, when I went there, they had actually what they call their agile champion. So there was this person who was bringing Kanban, and they had been doing Kanban for several months by the time I joined. And well, by the time I got there, the board was there, but it was entirely abandoned. And that was because they were trying to do just the mechanics, and they were doing it wrong. So so it really depends on how successful we are in doing this. And one key factor was, again, that they were trying to do just the mechanics of Kanban. So, you know, so the change has to do, again, if you inject drive, you know, if you motivate people, and if you show them and you actually perform actions towards improving the way they communicate and they collaborate, you're going to start seeing a significant change, you know, in behavior. So, you know, that's something that I always do, always. And the way to measure it, again, you know, what I invite you to do is you can go to Wikipedia and look for the gross happiness factor or index, and then there's links to several sources where you can get examples of the different aspects they measure, and then you can just extract from there, you know, what you consider that is important to your project or to your organization. And it's mostly a qualitative measure, but it's very important. And I did this at different points in time with different projects, and it is very clear. I mean, you can see it, but it's nice when you actually get this direct feedback from the stakeholders, and you can measure that. So I think it's important to do it.
Great, thank you very much. So there are a couple of questions that have actually come up here, Masa, and I'm going to ask them in the order they came in. How do you measure communication? Your slide 29. There's a question.
So communication is measured in different ways. One of them is the amount of documentation that is being generated, and how much that documentation is being referred to. So if you see a decrease in documentation but an increase of reference to it, you're on the right track. Also, if you see team member and project group isolation, then means there's problems of communication. The more integrated you see them, the better. The less lengthy your meetings are, the better. The more you see people feeling free to, without hesitation, go and consult each other, the better the communication. You know, you see them smiling more. That is also a good indication. But also, you know, I ask them directly. You know, be it, you know, just a direct, you know, a person-to-person question, or again through this happiness, you know, index factor that I apply.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, and let me add, and this is not only internal, this is also external. This has to do with end users and customers as well.
Excellent. There is a very interesting question from Gerald Sylvester, and this is a question that we come across many times. How does Kanban best fit in an IT maintenance project? Please share if you have any tips or suggestions for a maintenance project team where priority of tasks changes frequently. Tasks will be on hold for a long time, which is very, very typical of these IT maintenance, IT support type of projects. So what are your suggestions here, Masa?
Okay, well, one of the best measures to handle that properly is to have your policies right. So you have to make sure that you have your classes of services and your work type items well identified, and of course this is going to improve over time. But make sure that you have explicit policies behind them, and that policies have a very clear indication as to the conditions for a ticket to enter your Kanban system. The better those policies are, and that includes having these policies well communicated and agreed upon, then the less frequent those changes of priority are going to happen. That is one aspect. The other one is once you have a ticket inside your Kanban system, if a priority changes, then that's a flag. That invites having to carry on a conversation and identify why the priority changed. If the priority changed because we were not careful as to how we're handling our policies, then we have to modify the policies. If they changed, for some other reason, it's a case by case. More often than not, when you have something like that, is because there's a need to promote a ticket to a class of service that accelerates that ticket. But that should happen rather rarely. So again, what you have to make sure is to have the right policy to determine the conditions of entry into the Kanban system, and then have the right policies that indicate the behavior of that class of service or of that work type item inside the Kanban board. And you have to respect that as much as possible. Sometimes the changes of priority are more just a wish from somebody that don't necessarily have validation. So be careful with that.
Great. There's another question, Masa. Do you teach 2 to 3 day classes on Kanban? If so, when is your next one? This is from Michael Masa.
Yes, we do, and we have different schedules. I invite you to go to our website, www.valueinnova.com, to look at these. Courses are actually being created as we go also, so the best thing to do is to frequently check on those dates. We also are beginning to offer courses online for those people who can't, be present because the locations are different. So yes, the answer is yes, but please look at the website.
Great. There is a follow-up question from Gerald. We have expedite in Kanban board. Similarly, do we have something to list up least priority tasks, on hold tasks?
Yes, there are different mechanisms. One very useful mechanism is to have swim lanes in your Kanban board, and you can identify lanes that are dedicated to lower priority items that behave differently. And that makes it not only visually easier to understand, but that reduces the possibility of human errors as well. So that would be one way to do it.
There is a question from Ram Srinivasan. Are there any other books on Kanban other than David's book? And on system thinking, I know Jerry Weinberg has a book. Any other books? Any recommendations?
Yes, I mean there are different books. Well, the books that I have looked at the most, just because it allows me to have different perspectives, are the well-known, the personal Kanban and the Lean Startup books. But other than that, books that I highly recommend are Donald Reinerson's book on principles of product flow, and the readings of Russell Acuff. There's a couple of books from him. They're actually very fun readings. And they have to do mostly with systems thinking. Regarding other readings, and there's different sources. You don't necessarily have to buy a book. You can go online and find quite a bit about the system of profound knowledge from Deming. So those are really good places to get started with.
Great. There's another question which says, what is the best way to implement Lean Kanban and get all the benefits that you just talked about? So what are the steps, probably at a high level, that you need to do to get all these benefits?
Okay. So the step number one is you have to make sure that you understand the organization. So from my perspective as a coach and consultant, one of the first activities that I do, if not the first, as much as possible, is to do a company assessment or a team assessment. And this can be done in different ways. It can be before the engagement, or it can be once I begin the engagement. There is a technique that I came up with. I got the initial inspiration from one of the innovation games from Luke Homan. However, this is different. But basically, what I do is it's a serious game in which all the stakeholders are involved. The participation is exactly the same at the same level. I make sure that everybody is mixed so that they are not divided by teams. And where there is no room for influence by leaders or people who are more outspoken. And what I do is I just focus them on an activity that has to do with reflecting on a wall how the organization is doing in all sorts of aspects. I don't put any boundaries. I let them just freely indicate every single aspect. They can talk about technical aspects. They can talk about communication. It can be things that have to do with, quality of work life, etc. I mean, basically any topic. And they reflected on a wall that has positional semantics. And that positional semantics allows us to understand what they consider to be, what they consider to be in really good shape, and what they consider to be like really horrible. And of course, this is done at personal level. Each stakeholder, provides that information in an anonymous way, but in a way that is visible to everybody. And then the second part of this exercise is to come to an agreement. So we take each one of those issues that were brought onto the wall, and we make sure that everybody agrees with that issue and where it should be, in terms of how well it is or how horrible it is. And that gives me basically a photo of the organization. And that brings an awareness to everybody as to how they are doing. And it's an invitation to start figuring out how to improve. There are several steps after that to begin the actual improvement, but that's the first step. Then the second step is to start doing a combination of lean thinking with Kanban. And as I do that, I start working with leadership. I very strongly believe that the best way to do this is a top-down approach. If you don't have the buy-in from leaders, it's going to be very difficult to do it, and it's going to be extremely difficult for it to persist. So there has to be a lot of interaction, coaching to leaders, and this can go all the way up to the CEO.
Great. That brings us to the top of the hour, and that concludes our webinar for today. Our contact information is listed in the screen before you. Please look out for subsequent webinars in the series, which we will communicate to you in the next several weeks. Recording of this webinar also will actually be sent to all of you. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending this webinar. It has been great, and thanks, Masa, for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, everybody.